Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today I'm going to take you on an exciting journey aboard the Dawnbreaker. The Dawnbreaker itself is a massive Arathi Zeppelin, but when the dungeon starts we first need to get aboard. The first pulls include Nightfall Ritualists, which have two important abilities. The first is Tormenting Ray, which blasts damage into two people. You'll want to use defensives if targeted by this, although don't overcommit them. If one person uses a big defensive, your healer may be able to keep the other person up without the need for more cooldowns expended. Stygian Seed is the other ability cast by the Ritualist. This is a magic dispellable dot that should be dispelled quickly, but first the target needs to get more than 15 yards away from the rest of the group to avoid doing extra damage and knocking back players that are too close. The other enemies in these pulls are much less important than the Ritualists. Kick ensnaring shadows from the Shadow Mages if you can, though. Once you make it to the Dawnbreaker, you'll find a pull with a Nightfall Commander. This enemy puts a nasty bleed on your tank, so use tank defensives and healer externals as needed to survive this if you can't remove it. You'll also want to kick Abyssal Howl. As you fight, the Dawnbreaker will take flight, and once you clean up another Ritualist pull, you'll need to help free it from two Nerubian-controlled ships, snaring it with webs. Luckily, you'll gain the ability to take flight and skyride to these ships. Just make sure your group all heads to the same ship and lets your tank land first. These ships feature a new enemy, the Sureki Webmage, which casts Bursting Cocoon. Whoever gets this should spread away from the group. Once you kill the enemies on these ships, you'll need to place a bomb to destroy them. Once both ships are destroyed, you can head back to the Dawnbreaker and engage Speaker Shadowcrown, the first boss. The big tension on this fight is that the boss will place growing void zones under players, and then frequently cast Obsidian Beam, which will cause rotating death lasers to appear around the boss, in addition to dealing a massive tank hit on cast that you'll want a defensive for. If the boss is too close to any void zones, you can end up in a position where it's difficult or impossible to avoid running into either the void zone or the laser. So try to make sure that you either bait the zones away from the boss, or quickly move the boss away from the zones. Shadowcrown also casts Burning Shadows, which is a dispellable dot. When this is dispelled, everyone except the tank will get a moderately large healing absorb that the healer will need to deal with. At half health, she'll cast Darkness Comes, which will kill everyone aboard the ship. Luckily, you don't need to be on the ship, as you'll again gain the ability to take flight and circle around the ship for a bit until it's safe to return. Just don't stray too far. From 50 to 0, the boss will be slightly nastier, featuring 4 lasers instead of 3, and throughout the entire encounter, the boss will cast Shadow Bolts on your tank, which do a decent chunk of damage but are interruptible. At 0%, the boss will do another Darkness Comes cast, which you'll again need to fly off the ship to dodge. Once this finishes, she will instantly die, and if you're in a Mythic Plus dungeon, there's no need to return to loot the body, so you can head straight down to Merildar to start the next part of the dungeon. This area is very tricky because it's very easy to accidentally pull more than you were planning to, as there are a lot of tightly packed areas and patrolling enemies. In general, be mindful of your surroundings and try to land in a nice safe area and clear cautiously towards your target. There are 3 mini-bosses that should all be killed before engaging the boss, as each one that lives empowers the boss with health, damage, and an empowered ability. There are many different types of enemies occupying the Arathi city, and a general rule of thumb is that if you can kick something, you probably should. There aren't really any filler casts that are safe to let go off. The Manifested Shadow Elementals will put a nasty undispellable dot that needs to be healed and or defensive, and it also fires Black Hail Swirlies at your group, which can be tough to dodge if you're fighting in a tight space. Tacticians gain a massive Enrage that slows them by a lot, so they either need to be kited, soothed, or the tank needs to use a defensive to survive their onslaught. They also aim a frontal at your tank, so try to aim this away from your group, and then dodge it. One of the mini-bosses in the church atop the hill is Ixkreten the Unbreakable. It casts Terrifying Slam, which always aims at the tank, so everyone else can be ready and avoid getting hit. This also knocks the tank back. Ixkreten and the other 2 mini-bosses also blast random players and leave behind a non-dispellable dot that needs healing or defensives. Another mini-boss is Ascendant Viscoxria, which is very easy to accidentally pull a bunch of extra trash with if you try and drop in directly on her rather than landing somewhere safe and clearing towards her. In addition to the Abyssal Blast, this Coxria channels party-wide damage which needs to be healed through. The last mini-boss is Death Screamer Ikentok, which can be fought alone or with friends depending on your group's combined total of courage and hubris. Ignore the skeletons on the ground from our previous attempts. Besides the Abyssal Blast, Ikentok has the Dark Orb ability, which aims a massive projectile at a player that travels in a line. The orb does apply a dot if it hits anyone directly, but it also explodes for a ton of damage when it hits terrain. This damage does get reduced as it travels, however, so try to aim down a nice long road and not into a nearby wall. Once all 3 mini-bosses are dead, you can clear out some space to fight the patrolling boss, Anub'ikkaj. Try to fight in an area where you'll have multiple good corridors to aim dark orbs down, as the boss does have that ability from Ikentok. It also has party-wide damage channel from Vizcoxria, and the Terrifying Slam from Ixkriten. You're already masters of these abilities, so I'm sure you can handle this boss with ease. The only other thing to look out for besides ninja pulling trash is Animate Shadows, which spawns small adds that cast on random players. These can be grouped up and AoE CC'd while killed without too much trouble. After Anub'ikkaj goes down, you'll get the terrible news that while you were gone, the Dawnbreaker is once again under attack. Fly back up and take out the Nightfall Dark Architect, which auto-attacks for shadow damage and can be quite dangerous depending on your tank. It also summons adds that should be quickly killed, and channels Tormenting Eruption, which deals heavy damage to 2 targets and also forces them to spread away from others. Once you deal with the Dark Architect, Rasha'nan will assault the Dawnbreaker. This boss latches onto the side of the ship, and if your tank ever stays out of melee range, it'll quickly murder your group with tacky bursts, so be careful. One of the core mechanics of the boss is Rolling Acid, which will target a player, and after a brief delay, shoot out acid from the side with the line through the player. Here's what that looks like. Naguura is targeted, and can see that the acid will roll to her right, so she runs to the right of the group to make sure that it won't hit any other players. If done correctly, only one player needs to get hit by this, massively reducing the pain for the healer, as they also have to deal with some party-wide damage on this fight. You may notice that Rasha'nan has a lot of health. Luckily, the Arathi have noticed that too, and they'll bring you some bombs, which you'll need to pick up and run to the boss, then throw using your extra action button. If you fail to do this, they'll explode and damage the whole group instead. The Arathi unfortunately made the bombs very hot, so whoever is carrying the bomb will be taking some damage over time, making it a good idea to get them exploded on the boss as quickly as possible. After pushing the boss to 64% HP, it'll fly down and you'll need to chase it using Skyriding once again. Make sure to grab the floating orbs to extend the duration of your radiant light. If this expires, you will die instantly to the darkness. Chase the boss and kick it once it lands, then the fight continues without any bombs, but the boss will now shoot webs at players, tethering them to the webs. Moving out of the webs breaks the tether, but this break deals some moderate party damage, so be careful if anyone is low. The web areas are kind of big and annoying, but when they get hit by rolling acid, they'll become acid pools instead, which are smaller but quite lethal. Try not to stand in either. Once you get Rasha'nan to 60% health, you win, for now. The boss will fly away to the Narubar Palace, which you can raid to kill it once and for all. That's it for the Dawnbreaker. If you missed our previous videos in this series, they are up on this channel, which you should also subscribe to. We hope you have a great time in your dungeon runs. Thank you very much for watching.